Hi, family. It's Kara Beaufort, the host of Kara's Law. I'm so excited. Today, we have a very special guest who is a very well known attorney, former judge in the state of New Jersey. So let's bring her on. No one other than the Honorable Karen Brown.
Hi, Kara.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I am good. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for making yourself available. I know your schedule is probably busy, so let's jump right into it. So, you have a very diverse resume, but let's start from the beginning. Growing up, what inspired you, if anything at all, to become an attorney?
Actually, it was a personal experience with my family. When I was 13 years old, it was a Saturday morning. I was away at a drama competition. When I got home, my parents were gone. The door was open. My 12-year-old brother at the time was gone. And my neighbors told me that the narcotics detectives had raided my house because my father, who was actually addicted to crack cocaine, used to sell drugs to support his habit. So that particular day, the narcotics detectives decided that they wanted to raid my house and they took everyone. So my mom, who is intellectually disabled, would call me from jail, call me collect. And mind you, I'm 13 years old and I'm a freshman in high school. So I don't know what to do. I was left home by myself. I remember going to municipal court and seeing my parents get arraigned. And I just felt so helpless as this little 13-year-old, black girl sitting in court watching her parents be arraigned and read these charges. And I didn't know what to do. We didn't have any money. My mother was on public assistance. My father sold drugs to support his habit, but didn't really have a job. So we didn't have a lot of money. We barely had any food in the house. And I just remember feeling so helpless sitting there as a 13-year-old. And so my mom ended up getting a public defender. Although my father wanted to take responsibility for everything, for some reason, the public defender got my mother to plead guilty. So she ended up getting a criminal record for no reason, for something that she really wasn't involved in. And it was because she really didn't understand. She read and she probably read and wrote on a second grade level because I was always reading my mom's mail and paying bills. So she was scared, she didn't understand, and she ended up pleading guilty and getting a felony conviction on her record. So I felt that that was a grave injustice, and I felt that I never want anyone to feel helpless and powerless and lose their dignity because they are poor or because of their race. So that is what motivated me to want to become an attorney.
Wow. What a remarkable journey. You said a few things that resonated with me. Number one, you stated that, in your own words, that your mother was or is intellectually disabled, and then your father was addicted to drugs. First and foremost, for you to have come this far, right, and have accomplished as much as you have done beyond just a Black woman, I mean, beyond just a woman, as a person, that's remarkable because, as you know, the odds were clearly stacked against you. So I'm assuming, just based upon what I know about you, that there were positive things that you relied on. And I'm assuming it's athleticism. So I've heard that you are good at basketball. Okay. So if you don't mind, right, can you just share with us how, like, especially given your family dynamics, right? And I think that at this point, let's take a moment and let's just acknowledge that just because a person starts one place doesn't mean that they are destined to be unsuccessful, right? So I think that this is great. And I hope that your story reaches so many women just outside of New Jersey or people outside of New Jersey. But how, if at all, did you get involved with athleticism, specifically basketball, given your home dynamics?
Interestingly enough, my dad loved basketball. And although he was addicted to drugs, when he was younger, he used to coach and he was a really good player. He never played for a team, but he played street basketball. And he actually coached at my grammar school when I was a young girl. And I remember going to his basketball games when it was a school called public school number 6, and the infamous principal Joe Clark was actually the principal, not the Lean on Me movie
Get
character, or
out.
the movie based on Joe Clark. Yes. So when you see the scenes of him being at the grammar school, that was my grammar school. So my father
Wow.
essentially coached basketball for him. But unfortunately, my father apparently got caught with weed or something and he got fired. But I remember going to the games and like cheering for the team and seeing my father coach. And he always had this love of basketball. He used to make his own jerseys before jerseys were a thing. He would take t-shirts, rip the sleeves off, write Olajuwon on the back and the number, and that was his jersey. So he had this love for basketball. He never pushed me to play, but when I was in 8th grade, a young lady invited me to the YMCA to play. And I really didn't know what was going on. And I thought it was a nice way to get involved and stay out of trouble, but I really didn't know what I was doing. So that summer, I decided to pick up a book called Basketball Fundamentals. Actually, it's a book that my father had from the library. He never returned it. So I took that book and I read the drills and I started doing the drills at the playground. And people used, and the boys used to make jokes of me because I was doing my little drills with my book and they would take the book and joke around. And then I just kept practicing and practicing. And then by the end of the summer, I was playing with the boys. And at first they would let me score and then I started getting decent. So then they, were tough on me. So then when I went to high school, I went to a performing arts high school. We didn't have sports because we were too small of a school. So you had to play at one of the major high schools. So I went to play at one of the high schools that was closer to my side of town called Patterson Kennedy. And that's where my career started from there. I had gotten a couple of scholarship offers, but I felt like I wasn't a real strong Division 1 player. So I decided I wanted to concentrate on my academics because I knew I wanted to go to law school. So I sort of at first gave up my dream of playing basketball. So I got a lot of scholarships, academic scholarships, ended up going to Seton Hall University. My freshman year, I played intramural basketball. And then some ladies that I played with asked me to try out for the team. And then I ended up being a walk on for Seton Hall basketball. So that was a wonderful experience. And it was wonderful playing in high school as well, because one, it was a great distraction. I played basketball, I played softball. I tried to play a sport every season. I tried cross country, I tried basketball, softball. So I was busy almost every season. So for me, sports was an outlet. It taught me discipline. It taught me resilience. It taught me teamwork. It was a way of bonding with people, meeting people from other schools. So for me, it was great. It was tough in college playing and concentrating on your academics. So it definitely taught you time management, how to manage your time, how to prioritize, how to strategize, and things of that nature. So sports kind of complemented my academics. And it's helpful, being an attorney as well, because it teaches you competitiveness, both positive and sometimes negative. But, when you're an athlete, you're constantly competing, sometimes as an individual, sometimes as a team. You have to learn teamwork. So all of those values I learned from sports that really helped me to this day.
Wow. So I have to ask this question because I'm burning to know. How old were you when you essentially taught yourself how to play basketball? Because I know you read it in a book, which I think is remarkable. But how old were you?
If it was in a book, I was gonna learn it. I was gonna find it. It was my freshman year of high school because
Wow.
I got that little experience. Yeah, it was my freshman year of high school. So I played at the YMCA. And then my freshman year, I tried out, I went to Patterson Kennedy to play. And then it was actually that summer when I realized I got to get better at this. I don't know which basket to shoot at. Like, I want to be good at this. So I practiced that summer and I actually came back and the coach didn't recognize who I was. He pulled me to the side and said, "Are you the same little girl that was playing last year on the freshman team?" And I was like, "Yes." And I ended up playing varsity. because I just was like, I got to get better. Like, this is not acceptable.
So is
I
that
was
your
very, I'm sorry.
No. I mean, I'm so impressed because in my mind, right, sports, athleticism, basketball in particular, is something that I think would be taught visually. Like I played like very on a basic level, stopped at grammar school, that was it. But I mean, self-taught in high school, and then on top of it, because I mean, did you have female like classmates that would play with you? I know you referred
I
to
played with the guys because I felt like that made you better. And with guys, like you don't have to worry about how hard you pass the ball. They're not soft. So for me, it toughened me up. And they were hard on me. Like they didn't let me, even when I started playing at first, they would just let me score. But after a while, they were like, she's getting too good. So for me, the guys were more competitive. And the ladies that I know that played and were good, they started out playing with guys. There weren't a lot of female leagues. There
Mhm.
wasn't AAU wasn't really big at that time. So
Okay.
the two twins that I knew that I played with, like outside of school, we would play, school during the summer, and I'm playing teacher. At some point, they would go and play with the guys. So I started, doing what they did, but I started out with the book. So I kind of knew some drills from being introduced to the sport, but I got the book and it really taught me the fundamentals because I'm a visual person. But I like to see words on a page. So it's really weird, but I understood the diagrams. I understood what the techniques they were describing in the book. And my father had it, so I figured it must be good. So I took it, and I had it actually my entire high school career. We never returned it to the Patterson Library, so I
Oh
kept
wow.
it, and that's part of how I learned how to play.
So thank you. So you referenced this a few minutes ago when you were just describing your experience playing basketball, and you spoke briefly about the competitive nature, right, of basketball, and then essentially playing with your male colleagues. Would you say, in particular, that the college basketball experience helped you to be more competitive in the area of law in terms of wanting to when you were as a practicing attorney adjudicating or prosecuting or defending cases, did that competitive exposure in college with basketball help you as an attorney?
I would say it probably did because I was used to winning. Like I was part of championship teams in high school. Like we were the only team from the city of Patterson to ever win the Tournament of Champions, and they've had great teams come out of Patterson. So we were very, very competitive, and so that competitive nature carried over into everything because I just wanted to be good at everything I did, whether it was school, like the guys on the basketball team used to call me 3.9 because that was my GPA,
Oh wow.
so and I was upset when I didn't get a 4.0, so it just was like I wanted to be good at everything, and coming from a winning team and a winning spirit where everybody wanted to win and everyone wanted to do well, that carried into college and that carried into law school. We had a pretty good team even when I was at Seton Hall. We were like one of the first women's basketball teams to make the Sweet 16.
Oh
We ended
wow.
up beating Connecticut, who was a top, what I think they were ranked number one. They were undefeated. So that spirit of competitiveness, but it was like a friendly competitiveness. It wasn't a I want to do better than you. It's we all want to do well and we all want to do our best. So that's the spirit that I had in college and that pretty much stuck with me throughout my career.
And it's evident, right? Because if you see me glaring over, I'm just looking at my notes in my bio. I mean, you have an, like, as I referenced before, you have an amazing bio. I mean, few people will ever hold the various positions that you have. A practicing attorney, right? For those of you who do not know, before a person in the state of New Jersey, let me be specific. In the state of New Jersey, before a person can become any judge, you do have to be a licensed attorney in good standing. So Judge Brown is, at the time, right, was a great licensed practicing attorney. But in particular, you have held these various titles: county clerk, municipal judge, and of course, practicing attorney. And I'm certain other titles, right? But of the three that I've just referenced, what position of those, like of the three, which one in particular has shaped you the most personally? Personally, let's talk about that first.
It's hard. When I became county clerk, I actually was the first African American to hold that position in the state of New Jersey, and I was 30 years old. And so all of a sudden, I was thrust into this position, making history, not knowing the weight of it all. And then coming into an office where I was a Democrat, the Republican held that office for a decade, and I'm 30 years old. I'm in charge of now 50 people, all older than me for the most part. My first time managing a number of people that size. The first time I'm handling a budget revenues of $30 million. And while I had positions prior to that, I was the first African American assistant county counsel, first African American county adjuster. They were somewhat smaller roles, but this was a constitutional office, a office created by the Constitution. And not only was I the first African American in the state to hold the position of county clerk, I was the first African American in Passaic County to hold any constitutional office. Out of all three constitutional offices, surrogate, county clerk, and sheriff, I was the first African American. So here I have the weight of me, that weight on me at 30 years old, and not really having a role model. So I had to kind of figure things out. And I had a lot of battles and I just wanted to do well. And there were a lot of forces working against me because they just didn't want me to be there, let alone politically, but people in the office who were loyal to my predecessor. It was a civil service jurisdiction. So it's not like you can come in and just fire everyone and bring your own people in. People have rights, so, the only person I only had one person in one position that I could fill coming in. So I had to inherit everyone else. So that that helped me again build resiliency, and it helped me with growth. Being a judge, however, I think was very impactful because when you think about when I thought about judges, sometimes you all often think about inflicting punishment. You don't realize what impact, a positive impact that you have on people. And what I realize is when you're on the bench, who you are, your integrity, your character, that shows in how you deal with people from the bench.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that I had a lot of power to do good. And I did a lot of good. And it was evident because I would have people come up to me in the community and say to me, thank you for helping my son. Thank you for helping my daughter. I had a friend of a family member who I was at a barbecue and she came up to me and apologized to me because of a court matter where she was being abused by her boyfriend. I had uh, I had granted a restraining order. She came in the next day, and I just spoke to her and really let her express herself. And she wanted to drop the charges, but I was just so concerned about her health and her welfare, and she was upset and didn't really understand. And then she realized a little later what I had done, and that practically I had saved her life. And so there was, several stories like that. I was, in addition to being the municipal court judge in Patterson, 7 months after I got appointed in Patterson, I got approached about being the chief judge in the city of Passaic. And
Oh,
I
wow.
ended up being the first African American to hold that position as well. And the reason why I was asked to to serve in that position was because they felt like the judges there were not treating people with dignity and respect. And so I was honored to serve in that role because what people may or may not know is that people's perception of the entire justice system at a lot of times is based on their experience in municipal court. Because when you think about it, a lot of those people will never appear in superior court,
Mm-hmm.
but most people have gotten a traffic ticket.
Mm-hmm.
So most people will get that experience in municipal court. So their entire opinion of the justice system may be based on their one experience in municipal court. So for me, it was important to be a positive face to the judiciary, to be a role model to people. Because what's interesting is a lot of people couldn't believe I was a judge outside of seeing me on the bench, because they were unfortunately used to seeing judges as older white men.
Mhm.
And here I was again, I was in my 30s. I think I was 34 when I was appointed. I'm sitting in Patterson, I'm sitting in Passaic. I grew up in Patterson. I grew up in the areas that were not so good, you know. So to see me sitting up there, people would be shocked. So to me, I had a duty to make sure that one, I was a role model to the people that were coming before me, and most importantly, that I treated them with dignity and respect. And what I found was, when you do that, no matter what sentence you may give them, they will respect you and they will appreciate it if you treat them with dignity and respect.
Thank you. And so I actually, you said so much in terms of individuals who at that time will come into your courtroom. Your experience or their experience with you essentially could be their only experience with the judicial system. So now, wearing both your former judge hat as well as your attorney hat, if you want to do both or just one, what is a misconception that you would want to clear up about judges or attorneys in general?
I think a lot of people think judges are cold and disconnected and mean, and some may be, but there are a lot of judges that actually do care, that are compassionate, that do want to see justice. So I think that that is a common misconception. And honestly, there are judges that I appeared before in my private practice that weren't so nice. Judges that I knew that I didn't want to appear in front of, and I would tell them, Judge such and such, I am cool with you outside of the courtroom, but it's like when you get on the bench, you're a totally different person. You're like an a-hole. What's up with that? So I didn't want to appear in front of certain judges as an attorney. So can you imagine someone that is appearing without counsel, or just appearing at all, just the fear, that they might be experiencing just appearing in court. So it's a big responsibility when you're sitting up there. And to me, there's no need to abuse your power, because people are already petrified a lot of times. So why torture them? Why be disrespectful? So I just didn't feel the need to flex my muscle or to show people who would, I'm in charge because I'm on the bench. They already know. So, but that was my experience. I don't know if I digressed from the question.
No, you didn't. And you referenced something that I don't think many people will ever know is almost in a sense the power to, pleasantly or politically in a politically correct way check your colleague, right? Who's your equal. Another judge to say, you might not realize your tone, but your tone is, I mean, completely offensive. And if you're saying as an attorney, one might be intimidated appearing before you, how would that pro se person who can't afford an attorney, right? Or has a stuttering issue. And let's just face it, when a person goes to municipal court, sometimes you're seeing a person at their worst. Yes, it could be for a traffic, violation or a ticket or something like that, but people may not have the money to pay the tickets. And we know about the consequences. So thank you, because, you know, it's like some things, and sometimes, whether or not, I don't know if you can resonate with this, but I know I won't even say which roles, but sometimes appearing before judges and just recognizing that me as an attorney who obviously looks, as I appear as a woman of color,
Right.
sometimes judges will take a harsher tone with me as opposed to my colleagues. And that could be something that could be intimidating, right? A person who's in college and they're like, oh, wow, this, attorney or this prosecutor is being spoken to like, like a rag doll. Like, do I really want to take on this profession? So I'm happy that you're letting individuals know, hey, just because you have this title, you don't have to assimilate, and adopt this negative, I don't know, just persona of ultimately like elitism, right?
Right,
Like, because I'm a judge, I'm right. We know you're smart. We know
right,
that
right,
you're qualified. We know that you have power, but do you have to act like that? So
right.
thank you. So let's do this. Let's talk about how it was transitioning from the bench back into private practice.
Well, in New Jersey, most municipal court judges are part-time. So most of us had private practices. I think there's only maybe three towns where the judges are full-time and they don't have a private practice. But for me, I never stopped. So when I'm in court, obviously I'm a neutral arbiter. So I'm the referee. I call it as I see it. I don't take sides. I hear both sides and I make the call. As a private attorney, however, I'm a fierce advocate for my client. So I'm advocating strongly for a particular side and trying to convince the judge to side with me. So
Mhm.
it's different, so you adjust, you get a chance to experience both. I didn't do a lot of private practice when I was a judge because I was sitting in two courts, and then the judge in Clifton would I think he got sick, but when he was out, they would ask me to cover in Clifton as well. So I was actually sitting in three towns. So I was pretty busy. And I just loved being a judge. So for me, if I could have done it full time all the time, that was fine with me because I just loved what I was doing.
Wow. Do you miss it?
Um, I don't miss the money.
You're so transparent. I love it. I
I had
mean,
to put a couple of judgeships together to make a decent amount of money. I miss the people actually.
mhm.
I miss that. I miss seeing the kids come to court sometimes with their mom and leave me notes afterwards. I loved seeing people's face, like when I would walk into the front of the building regularly with everyone else. I don't have a robe. I have to go through security.
Mhm.
And some guys would try to get my number, which was funny. And then
Well, she's the
when the
judge.
court session started and I walked out on the bench, they're like, oh. So that was always funny because they didn't expect, I guess, someone like me to appear in front of them. So for me, it was great because again, I felt like I was a role model for people coming before me. And I have my own story. Everybody that comes before you has a story. Like you said, somebody might be having the worst day. They got and they got a ticket. You don't
Mhm.
know what people are going through. So it's important for you to be human, for you to be compassionate. Yes, people make mistakes. People do things purposely. It happens, but do you have to denigrate them? Do you have to disrespect them? Do you have to make them feel less of a person? You
Mm.
don't need to do that. So for me, I miss that part, and I miss making a positive impact on people's lives. Like when people were jailed for years. They come out, they want a fresh start, but they've got all these tickets. They can't get their license because their license is suspended because they have all these tickets, but they were in jail, so they weren't able to pay the tickets. So fines piled up on top of each other. So they couldn't get out of it. I had the discretion as a judge to waive fines, give you community service, help you start all over. So if I see that you're coming before me, you're trying to get your life together, you're not ignoring these tickets, but you're trying to get a job, but you can't get a job because you don't have a license. So I had the ability to waive fines. I remember when I first moved to Bergen County after being in Passaic County like my whole career for the most part. I got a delivery from a furniture store, and a young man was part of the delivery team, And he looked at me. He said, "Were you a judge in Patterson?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "You are the reason why I have this job."
Wow.
He said, "You waived my fines. Then you explained to me how I could, restore my license. I followed all of the steps that you advised me to do, and I got this job." So those kind of stories, those kind of experiences I missed. I miss, but I'm still able to make an impact in my private practice. I still volunteer, and I still have some plans you know, that I want to implement in terms of pro bono legal representation and nonprofits and things of that nature. So I do miss it.
Wow. I mean, to know, to see like the fruit of your labor, right? The hard, because sometimes it could be, even though it's not a bad decision you made, it's a decision that could be scrutinized, right? Let's just be honest. Sometimes everyone isn't always happy when we help individuals. So
Right.
I'm happy that you ultimately are acknowledging your role in this, because a lot of times we don't want to do that. You did nothing
Right.
wrong. You did it, like you said, within your
Mhm.
discretion, and it's invaluable the impact that you can have on someone's life. But this conversation is just reminding me just to be kind to people, right? Because I
Right.
didn't even think about what happens to a person's record when they're in state prison. And if they did have a couple of tickets, now you come home and you probably owe thousands of
Right.
dollars because of
Exactly.
not even the underlying ticket, but because of
Right.
fines and fees. You just never know the burden, right, that
Right.
people
Right.
carry. So thank you. So which personal values have guided your decision through, I would say, difficult, if you had difficult periods in your career?
Oh, I've had difficult periods in my career. And I paid a price for being the type of person that I was. Like when I was a judge someplace, I remember it was the day before Thanksgiving,
Mhm.
and the cops went to a certain judge that did not look like me and did not look like the community, and got the judge to sign arrest warrants for, oh gosh, a good number, maybe 50 people in a public housing project.
Oh,
Decided
wow.
to set bail for each of those people at a number where they obviously could not afford to get out. And the next day, I had to arraign all of these people. So the rest was on Tuesday. I took the bench Wednesday. Thanksgiving was Thursday. So,
Mhm.
but the tickets were from July of that year. So why do you choose 2 days before Thanksgiving to arrest these people for loitering, hanging out in front of the building? And then you want to set five and $1,000 and $2,000 bail for hanging out, loitering in front of the building back in July. So not only did I have the ability to waive fines in certain situations, but I could release people on their own recognizance.
Mhm.
I was like, this is not fair. I'm not going to have these people spend Thanksgiving away from their family for a petty, disorderly persons offense. I'm going to release them on their own recognizance. And I released every single one of them on their own recognizance so they could be home with their families. And they just came back to court when their cases were scheduled. But that's what I did. Now, all of a sudden, after that, oh, we no longer need your position. We're going to go back from 3 judges to 2. And of course, my position was the only one up for reappointment. So I didn't get reappointed. But my thing is, I'm going to do the best that I can do when I'm in that position for whatever time I'm in that position. So you pay a price. Some things are not politically acceptable, or people may not agree with the way you govern. But for me, integrity is very, very important. Integrity, resilience, honesty. So for me, those are my core values, and I go to sleep very well at night. I can look myself in the mirror knowing that I've done my best, and knowing that I abide by those principles.
Wow. I mean, how does it feel to know that you made decisions that essentially is the foundation of the at least in 2018, I think it was the new bail reform essentially. And I mean, and that's the overall point. And anyone who's not familiar with it, please research it. But essentially, if you're not a threat to the community and if you're not a flight risk, really it's a higher burden, if you will, that the prosecutors have to argue before the judge, and the judge takes into consideration based upon certain factors to determine whether or not you are a threat to society, if you're a flight risk. Other than that, 9 times out of 10, you will be released with certain restrictions. I'll just leave it at that. So you essentially implemented what the state implemented. I want to say when I was a prosecutor in 2018, like genius. Like,
Thank you. So my thing, I'm so glad you said that, because when bail reform was coming out, I said we never needed bail reform because judges always had the discretion to release people on their own recognizance. If you see someone has a minor ticket and they have a bail of $500 and they've been in a county jail for 90 days and they wouldn't even serve 90 days if they were found guilty, you could have always released them on their own recognizance. So for me, we always had that discretion. So a discussion should have been had about why judges weren't exercising their discretion. So for me, yeah, I guess you can call it bail reform, but I exercise my discretion within the law. If somebody came before me and they spent 90 days in the county jail on a minor offense, and they're only in there because they cannot afford this $500 or $1,000 bail, I'm waiving it. I'm releasing you on your own recognizance. But I guess that wasn't, people weren't exercising their discretion in that manner widely. But it was always an option. That's why I didn't understand why we needed bail reform, because the cases and the examples that they use were examples like the ones I'm telling you about. People spending, all this time in jail on a $500 bail because they can't afford it.
Perfect. I am.
Sorry, I got excited.
No, conversations like this need to be had, because I just remember as a line assistant prosecutor, the various, how can I just say this, the rigorous trainings that we had to go through, and just the amount of resources that were invested, right, in implementing the bail reform. I want to say it was like 2018, because I left the prosecutor's office around 2018. It was like 2016, anywhere between 2016 2018. I can't remember. But needless to say, it's wow, like the power is always there, like written within our law. Justice is there. And sometimes people forget, as a prosecutor, you advocate in the interest of justice. Similar to the bench, you advocate for the interest of justice. So I hope that more judges are appointed with your personality, right? With your discipline, background, and just your desire to help, because that's needed. And, that's needed to shape people, because we all know one bad experience can forever change someone's life. Just one bad experience. So wonderful. I wouldn't say you talked about it. You talked about the repercussions for going against what's expected of you, right? When you spoke of essentially overturning what your colleague did. But is there a specific point in your career that you would consider a setback or a failure? And I'm even mindful of using the word failure, because there's no such thing as failure. But is there a point in your time that you believe, okay, you could have done something differently, if at all, and how did that shape you?
I had a lot of challenges, but I would not say that they were failures or setbacks, because they were opportunities for growth. Made me stronger, made me more resilient. In fact, in one case, I actually made law. So for me, I don't consider it failure. I consider it growth and legacy. Would I have done some things differently? I can't say exactly, because that was who I was at the time. I was a person that stood up for myself. I was a person that did not take the bullies. I grew up in a real tough neighborhood, real tough family, so we weren't intimidated. We were not taught to be intimidated by anyone. We were taught to stand up for ourselves. So I learned that from a young lady, being able to survive in Patterson. Like, you had to be tough. So that stayed with me. So I was not intimidated by people. If you did something wrong that I felt was against the law, and I felt like I suffered an injustice. I didn't start it, but I didn't have a problem finishing it. And I decided that I was gonna, at that age, my young in my career, that I was gonna stand up for myself and I was gonna fight for justice. How do I fight for justice for other people and I don't fight for justice for myself? So I paid a price for it. I will agree. I was, blackballed. I'm probably still blackballed. There are people that don't care for me because I stood up for certain things and they felt like I didn't go along with the game plan or with the party politics or basically being told what to do. But I just was not that person. And maybe that meant that I shouldn't have been in that arena. But God put me there and He put me there for a reason. And I got this experience for a reason. So I don't think I would have done anything differently because that's who I was at the time. Obviously, I am older and more experienced. So there are decisions that I make that may have been different than the decisions I made when I was younger. But that has to do with the fact that I fought a lot of battles.
Mhm.
So I, try to avoid as many battles as I can.
Hmm. You just referenced something. So you referenced your faith, right? And what it, because I'm assuming this is what I've gathered from you because I'm resonating with your story, especially you being a woman of faith and hearing what it sounds like you are an independent thinker. It sounds like you study something and when you come to a conclusion that you support, you're going to advocate for what you support. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
How, if at all, would you say that your faith has helped you like to stand? I think the young people say like stand on business 10 toes down, or essentially how would you say that your faith has helped you stand and be firm on certain positions that you just previously expressed to us, especially when it wasn't popular?
Because I know that there is a God, and I know that I have gotten this far because of God's grace and protection. Because if you look at my background, I shouldn't be here. My mother had me when she was 15, going on 16. She was, like I said, she probably reads and writes on a second grade level, intellectually disabled. My father was in and out of prison, addicted to drugs. We didn't have basic necessities at home. I didn't really have too many role models. I knew that there was a God. I ended up meeting a neighbor who brought me to church, and I just said, I know that there is a higher power because I mean, I didn't end up on drugs. I didn't end up, I didn't end up, like I said to myself, when I grow up, if I ever had children, I don't want them to go through what I went through as a child.
Mhm.
And for me, it's just only, it has to be a God. Like it's only God's grace that I'm here. Like I didn't inherit my mother's, situation being intellectually disabled. I've done pretty well in school. I I watched my father smoke crack in the kitchen with his family members, but yet I didn't have any desire to do that. I wanted a better life for myself. My parents couldn't do it for me, so I had to use the tools that were available to me to make a better life for myself. And I could not do that on my own. I could not do that with God's grace. So God has brought me through my situation from when I was a child all the way up into my adulthood. It still blesses me to this day. So for me, faith is a very, very important part of who I am. And I've gone through a lot. I fought a lot of battles, went through a lot. At times, almost wanted to kill myself. But I knew that if I could just make it through the day, God's got my back. So, and I'm probably not finished, fighting battles, but that is what keeps me. um, and I can't explain it, but that's that's what it is. for
Even
me.
as you speak, I just feel an anointing on you. So you are anointed to do difficult things, and it's wonderful to see that balance between anointing, like the love and the presence and the acknowledgement of God, in addition to intellectualism, in addition to activism. Like you're active in terms of what you believe, because a lot of times people will just rely on their faith and not do anything because they're scared. I don't want to be marginalized. I don't want to lose my job. I
Right.
need this. And you're like, no, absolutely not. And again, and I say that I've never met you, but I say this, that you are a role model and inspiration to not just women of color or women, but just people in general. Me, my personal belief, I do not believe in generational curses. I believe in independent decisions. You decided that you were going to make your life look much different than what you had experienced as a child, and you made that happen. I mean, we didn't even talk about how fabulous you are. Like, just, the hair and this. I remember in law
Cliche.
I remember in law school when a law professors were like, never wear hoops. And look at Judge
I
Brown,
know
fabulous.
I am so non-traditional and I've always been, but you know what? I've been authentically me. So, and I've gotten this far being myself, being authentic. I'm not perfect, I'll admit. I work on
Mhm,
myself every day.
mhm.
It's about growth, but it's for people to understand that you don't have to fit in a certain box to be successful in a particular area, that nobody can tell you you don't belong in the room. No one can tell you what you cannot do. Look at me. I tell kids when I speak to them, if you could go into your refrigerator right now and get something to eat, you had it better than I did. So that
Wow.
means if I can be what you call successful and accomplish all of these things in my life, there's no excuse for you. If you want to do something, you have to make up your mind that you want to go down a certain path, that you want to accomplish something. I didn't have anything laid out for me. Again, me and God. God took care of me. God put people in my life that helped me in certain situations, role models, So, and I didn't have nearly the amount of resources that are available now. You can go on YouTube and teach yourself stuff. I just taught myself how to crochet. So,
Wow.
I do research. I teach anything I want to learn, I go out and I learn it. Before I had to go to the library and check out a library book. Now you can just go on your computer and you can teach yourself certain things. If you're weak in a certain area, if you want to strengthen a certain skill, there's books. I listen to audiobooks. Like, I am constantly learning, I'm constantly improving. But if you look at where I came from, you wouldn't think that I'm supposed to be where I am and supposed to have held those positions. Right now I'm an assistant general counsel at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center.
Beautiful.
Completely different career in healthcare. I decided I wanted to get out of politics and I wanted something a little bit more secure. Didn't know how I was going to get into healthcare, but God blessed me with a temporary contract attorney position, and I went from there and I turned it into a legal position.
Mhm.
So, don't let anybody tell you that you can't do anything. I don't care who your mother is or isn't, who your parents are or aren't, where you came from, where you started. None of that matters. So I want people to understand that.
Oh, wow. First of all, let's not bypass where you work, because I don't think let me not assume you work for one of the best cancer research hospitals in the
That's right.
world.
Yes,
So,
yes.
like, because one of my girlfriends, she was an oncologist there who focused on research. So, I mean, everything that you do is great. And,
Oh, thank
if
you.
no, it's like, seriously, I mean, from all of the things that you have achieved, I hope that more people give you your roses now, because every single thing that you have done, these are positions that some of the top attorneys graduate. I didn't even ask you where you graduated from law school. Who
Rutgers
cares?
Law School, Newark.
Okay.
The Seton Hall undergrad. Yes, I'm through and through.
But overall, like, you have accomplished some really great difficult things, like really difficult things. I mean, I'm so excited and I'm inspired. So you have given us some just overall, I would say, advice on how to persevere. So this is Kara's Law, right? So I want you, because this is the final question, I want you to leave us with some advice, and let's focus on that young person, because again, so many times, just because you are a woman or a woman of color, someone may ask you, well, what do you have to say to Black women or women? Your experience, you are qualified to speak to every single person. So to a person who is, let's say, aspiring to be an attorney or just to work in the legal field or public sector, what advice do you have for them?
Again, don't be discouraged. Don't let anyone tell you that you cannot do something. Have integrity, persevere. If you need to reach out and get a mentor, but don't allow anyone to tell you that you're not qualified to do something, you don't belong in the room, and that you can't do it. So just persevere, and utilize all the tools that you have available to you to accomplish your goal.
Absolutely. Again, Judge Brown, thank you so much for your transparency. I'm not even going to say vulnerability, because you weren't vulnerable. You shared your story. And you and I both know people are still living through what you went through. So you are living proof that you will survive, and it's your decision to try harder. I mean, it's like no excuses. When I think about your story, it's like no excuses. Like, I have goals. Like, now I'm like, no excuses, right? Like, get it done. And I'm so grateful that you made yourself available, because I'll be honest, I never heard of you. Because if I heard of you when I was in law school, I would have been emailing you. I would have appeared at whatever bench you were on and like, hey, are you accepting applications for a mentor? Because you are amazing. But again, thank you for joining us. And you are, I think, the perfect guest, the perfect first guest for Kara's Law. So thank you again. And everyone, I hope that you'll tune in for the next episode of Kara's Law. Be blessed, family.